Last week, Carmelo Anthony was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and what a career he had. 10 All-Star appearances, 6 All-NBA appearances. He was the scoring champ in 2013, but one thing he never accomplished throughout his NBA career, winning a championship.
Yeah, he had some chances though. The Nuggets in the late 2000s were pretty darn good. The Knicks with him and Amari were competitive, but let's break down the reasons why he just never could get that ring.
Before we start talking about how Melo failed to win an NBA title, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. So a quick disclaimer before we get into Melo's career, no hate for not winning an NBA championship. He had an incredible career. He was a ton of fun to watch in his prime, but he's up there with guys like Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, and Chris Paul as some of the best players ever that didn't get a ring. Also, it's important to acknowledge he won a championship in college. In his lone season at Syracuse, he led the Orange to their only ever NCAA title. So he does, I guess, have a college ring there. Did they give those out back in 2003?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
LeBron doesn't have one of those.
Exactly.
That's weird that's Syracuse's only title?
Yeah.
Really?
I always thought they would have had more, but their only, men's basketball title.
He then declared for the 2003 draft he was taken 3rd overall by the Denver Nuggets, and look, things would have played out probably very differently in his career if he had gone 2nd to the Pistons. I mean, he could have sat the bench the entire year and won a title because the Pistons won the 2004 championship, and it would have been a great fit because the one thing that the Pistons always lacked was some elite offensive scoring. They were one of the best defensive teams of all time. If they could have a little more scoring, they could have been a dynasty, and that's exactly what Carmelo was. So naturally, they took Darko.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense to me.
Carmelo would end up going to Denver, and the Nuggets team that drafted him they were awful. They were coming off a 17-win season the year prior. They did have a young Nene. They had Marcus Camby. They added Andre Miller the same offseason. They drafted Carmelo, but still, just not a good roster. And you have to give Melo a ton of credit because despite that bad roster, in his rookie season, he leads them to 43 wins, their best record in almost 15 years. This got the Nuggets the 8th seed out west, but they were quickly taken down by KG and the Timberwolves in 5 games. During the following offseason, the Nuggets made a weird trade here. They sent 3 future firsts to land Kenyon Martin in a sign trade deal from the Nets, and they also gave Martin a 7-year, $90 million contract.
It's honestly not even that much money, but just seeing 7 years on an NBA contract is weird.
Yeah,
honestly.
It feels like some MLB move out here.
I will say what is weird though. Giving up 3 future firsts to land Kenyon Martin. Look, he was a fine player. I know he had the 1 All-Star season in New Jersey, but 3 firsts?
That's crazy.
That's too much. That is too much. The move did give the Nuggets one of the best front courts in the league though. You had Marcus Camby, Nene, Kenyon Martin, Melo. But like I said, Kenyon Martin, he had that 1 All-Star season in New Jersey, but he was never quite able to get back to that, and injuries really limited his production in the following years. Nuggets in the 05 season, they didn't start out too well. 13-15 after 28 games. Led to head coach Jeff Bzdelik getting fired. Assistant coach Michael Cooper was promoted, and then finally the Nuggets found their guy in George Karl. And we've mentioned it in a couple other videos, mainly the one about Melo's time with the Nuggets. He and George Karl did not agree whatsoever, and apparently from what we've heard from plenty of other guys, Boogie and whatnot, George Karl, bit of an asshole, but he is an asshole who gets results.
Yeah. I mean, he takes over and ends the season 32-8, which is just crazy.
That's like a 65, 66 win pace, something like that for an entire season.
That's wild. So the Nuggets, they fight their way in the playoffs. They get the 7th seed. That matches them up with the San Antonio Spurs. And despite upsetting them in game 1 in San Antonio, the Nuggets would fall in 5 games. No shame in that. Like, you have this mid-season coaching change. You fall to the eventual champions in round 1, but you follow that up with a pretty quiet offseason. So once again, not much expected from this Denver team. Maybe like the 7th or 8th seed again, another 1st round exit. But this season, Carmelo really established himself as one of the better players in the NBA. He averages 26.5 points a night, gets all NBA 3rd team. The Nuggets win 44 games, which technically got them the 3rd seed because they won their division, but they didn't get home court in their matchup against the Clippers. And once again, they go out in 5 games. Melo really struggles this series. I mean, the mid-2000s, Wes, it it was tough, but at this point...
The Northwest Division that year apparently wasn't tough. You win it with 44 games? Jeez.
Yeah, that's crazy. But at this point, 3 straight years, going out in 5 games in the first round, it felt like something needed to change.
Yeah, during that offseason, the Nuggets actually made a really good move acquiring J.R. Smith for 2 second-round picks, also picked up Anthony Carter in the offseason, and then in December, they made their big move. They sent out Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 future first-round picks to bring in Allen Iverson from the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, it's super obvious in hindsight that this wasn't going to work, but like, at the time, there was definitely some optimism. You're bringing in Iverson, who was a superstar with the Sixers, but at the same time, it's like, these were the 2 leading scorers in the NBA at the time, and now they were going to have to share the ball, It's like if Shea played with Giannis nowadays, maybe. And I don't even think that's comparable because both those guys are way more unselfish than Iverson or Melo were.
It's 2 of the most selfish players during that era playing with each other. So even after bringing in Iverson, you only improved by 1 win. And believe it or not, again, they fall in the first round in 5 games. This time again to the Spurs, where again, they also win game 1 in San Antonio. Just some deja vu here, but that's now 4 straight seasons fallen in the first round in 5 games. They run it back with the same core the next year and they broke through. They won 50 games. But the 2008 Western Conference was insanely tough, even compared to Western Conference standards, because 50 wins got them the AC.
Yeah, that matched them up with the Lakers in the first round, and they got swept by the eventual Western Conference champion. That offseason, though, they sent Marcus Camby to the Clippers to shed some salary, and early into the 2009 season, they ended the Iverson-Melo experiment, sending AI to the Pistons in exchange for Chauncey Billups. Basically, the trade that started the 15-year rebuild for the Detroit Pistons. It was a great fit for the Nuggets, though. I mean, Chauncey was a much, much better fit next to Melo because, he's a defensive guy, he can distribute, and he still can give you like 17, 18 points per game. And this trade worked great for the Nuggets. They won 54 games in 2009, best record in over 20 years. Finally were able to be the higher seed in some playoff series. They got the 2nd seed out west, took out the Hornets in 5 in round 1, took out the Mavericks in 5 in round 2, and they would fall to the eventual champion Lakers in the conference finals in 6 games. So, pretty great year. They do regress a little bit in 2010 though, down to 53 wins. That's good enough for the 4th seed. So again, you're hosting a playoff series, but this time you're knocked out by the Deron Williams, Carlos Boozer, Utah Jazz in 6 games. And that following off season, Melo refuses to sign a contract extension, essentially requests a trade, starts the torturous 2010-2011 season in Denver where everyone knew he wanted out. The Nuggets didn't want to trade him, and it's just like, will they, won't they? What's going to happen? And eventually he gets shipped out to the Knicks along with Chauncey in exchange for Wilson Chandler, Gallinari, Mozgov, Raymond Felton, 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Touch on that trade here in just a second, but his time in Denver, why he didn't win a title, 2 main reasons. Number 1, the West is just a bloodbath in the 2000s. Like, every year it is tough. I mean, you got to go through prime Kobe, prime Tim Duncan in the Spurs, Dirk Nowitzki in the Mavs, Nash in the Suns. That's 4 teams right there. That's not even counting like, Deron Williams in the Jazz.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, as good as Melo was, like, there were other teams that had better players and better supporting casts. Like, again, Kobe's prime, Tim Duncan, the Spurs, they were in their dynasty. And like you said, like, teams like the Mavericks, the Suns were also better with Dirk and Steve Nash. And on top of that, like, Melo's supporting cast, like, it wasn't that good. It was fine. Like, especially in 2009 after you acquired Chauncey Billups, that's really when it hit its peak and they made the conference finals. But besides that, like, you got guys like Nene, you got Kenyon Martin, who we said was past his prime. You got Andre Miller there. You got Iverson, who was a bad fit. Like, the supporting cast was fine and it led to fine results. So it makes sense why they didn't do more in Denver. Melo was not better than the star players, and the supporting cast was not better than those championship teams. So now on to the Knicks. Like, you're moving out east to a much easier conference. The Knicks had recently signed Amari over the offseason, and like we mentioned, Chauncey Billups was also included in the deal with Melo. So he had them, but besides that, this was not a deep roster. And on top of that, the Knicks actually had a better record prior to acquiring Carmelo. They end up finishing the season 42-40 in the Eastern Conference. That gave them the 6th seed, matched them up with the Celtics in the first round, but despite 2 close games games in Boston, the Knicks would get swept in Melo's first year in New York. The following offseason, the Knicks did make some major moves to improve the roster. They added Amon Shumpert in the draft. They traded for Tyson Chandler. They signed guys like Mike Bibby, Baron Davis, Steve Novak, and J.R. Smith. But even with all those additions, the Knicks weren't any better. They were beat up by injuries. Carmelo weirdly just had this awful season, really his worst statistical season since his rookie year. They did have the Lynn Sandy run, which gave him some life while Melo was out. But even with all that, the Knicks were just 18-24 in mid-March. This led to Mike D'Antoni resigning. They did have a solid end of the season under Mike Woodson. They got in the playoffs, but once again, you fall in the first round, this time to the Heat in 5 games.
Yeah, 2013 was a bounce back year for Melo. Led the league in scoring, finished third in MVP voting. Knicks for the most of the season were actually able to keep pace with the Heat, battling them for the first seed, but then the Heat go on their 27-game win streak and they open up that huge advantage over the Knicks. Still though, you win 54 games this season, their best record in almost 2 decades. Downside though was that Amari's body really started to fail him. He dealt with knee injuries throughout the season. He only appeared in 34 games in both the regular season and the playoffs. Without Amari though, the Knicks are still able to take out the Celtics in round 1, but they fall to the Pacers in the second round in a series that Melo really didn't have any help in. I mean, with that healthy, dominant Amari, the Knicks still most likely fall to the Heat in the conference finals, but I mean, you never know. The Pacers team that they took to 6 ended up taking Miami to 7 in the conference finals, so the Knicks would have at least had a chance, but following the 2013 season, Amari, the guy who's supposed to be his co-star, is now reduced to a bench player, and Melo slowly starts to decline, and the Knicks don't make the playoffs for the next 4 seasons. And finally, in 2017, Melo is sent off to Oklahoma City for Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott, and a second-round pick. So what prevented Melo from winning a title in New York? I mean, kind of like the Nuggets era, just straight up, none of his teams were good enough to win the title, but 2 main things stood in his way. Mainly, Amari, the guy who's supposed to be his 26-point, 10-board per night co-star, slowly succumbs to injuries. And then secondly, this team just was not going to beat the Miami Heat. No. I mean, no one else was in the East around that time, and the Knicks sure as hell weren't going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it gets forgotten about. Amari was in the MVP discussion in that season prior to Melo joining, or that stretch prior to Melo joining.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Amari signed with the Knicks, and it was like, this is going to put the Knicks back on the map.
Yeah,
this is what they need to, get back to playing at a championship level. A guy like Amari Stoudemire, because he was, viewed as a potential MVP guy.
And then basically in 2 years now, like you said, dude was a bench player and was just nowhere near the same player he was for them or his time with Phoenix. So the final section, we're going to call this the ring chasing era. As we said, Melo was traded to the Thunder in 2017. For the first time in his career, he was no longer the first option. The Thunder team, of course, had Russ and Paul George as well. The Thunder weren't the favorites out west. That was obviously the Golden State Warriors, but there weren't many teams besides the Warriors people were picking over the Thunder. Maybe they could be the second best team. People were saying maybe they could, give the Warriors a shot at least. But as the third option, Melo's numbers dropped significantly, and it wasn't just his scoring. He also shot a career low 40% from the field, and he was even worse in the playoffs as the Thunder fell in 6 games to the Jazz in round 1.
Yeah, he's then traded to the Hawks that offseason, where he's immediately bought out and then joins the Rockets. I mean, this is a Rockets team fresh off a 65-win season, pushed the Warriors to 7 games in the conference finals. So, maybe Melo could be the missing piece for them, but he had a hard time adjusting to a bench role, and he was cut after just 10 games in Houston. I will say he was really scapegoated in Houston because the Rockets were having a bunch of other problems this season, and Melo was not the biggest of their issues, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't signed for the rest of the season or the following offseason, and he's eventually picked up by the Blazers in November of 2019 when we were struggling like hell and we're just looking for anything to inject some life into the team. And he was kind of able to revitalize his career in Portland. He started 58 games for the Blazers in 2020, averaged 15.5 points a night. I remember had a game winner in Toronto against the Raptors, a really good Raptors team too that the Blazers beat on the road. But the Blazers are beaten in 5 games in the bubble in round 1 against the Lakers. Came back for us in the 2021 season off the bench again. But, as we know, you're not winning a title with the Blazers.
Of course.
I mean, maybe we were on the way. If we had just beaten the Nuggets in round 1 in 2021, we were there. We were close, you know?
Yeah, so after that 2021 season, his last chance of winning a ring, his last season in the NBA, he joins the Lakers in 2022. They're 2 years off winning their own title. They're bringing in Russ. You know, some people thought this could be a good team, and they'd end up being a massive disappointment. They only win 33 games, failing to even make the playoffs, and then Carmelo eventually retires in May of 2023. So the biggest reasons Melo never won a title in the NBA, first, his play style. I don't think Melo was good enough to be the best player on a championship team, and it's not that he wasn't talented enough, it's not that he wasn't a good enough scorer, it's just that like his play style, like he didn't make teammates better. He was an awful facilitator.
Well, there's a quote from Chauncey Billups from an article that came out like 6 years ago when Melo was like trying to get on a team. This was after the Rockets had cut him. And he basically said like, you know, Melo could score like 20 or 22 points or whatever and the team wins and he'd be pissed. But if he scores 35 and, you know, they lose, you know, he's not necessarily happy, but he's like, you know, content with it. You know, he was, according to Chauncey at least, in his prime, he was more concerned with, you know, getting his shots and getting his buckets than he was with the team winning. And look, you could see in his play style, like he is maybe like the purest of pure scorers. And there's a lot of guys like that in the NBA nowadays. You know, our guy, Anthony Simons, you know, is kind of like that, kind of a pure scorer. Tyler Hero is another one like that. The problem with these guys though, is if they have a bad shooting night, they basically don't do anything else for you. And Melo was kind of like the supercharged version of that. You know, he could give you 60 on any given night, but if he has a 5 for 21 shooting night, he doesn't play defense. He's not an elite rebounder. He's a terrible distributor. I mean, we were talking before the recording, like his career high for assists in a season was what, like 4.2 or something like that?
That's what it is.
And like prime Kobe Bryant in like 2006 or whatever, when he was averaging 35 points a game, was still getting at least like 5 assists a game.
Yeah.
So Kobe at his absolute worst shot chucking era still got more assists than Carmelo's career high.
Yeah, and on top of that, like Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, maybe guys that aren't elite distributors or not even like good distributors, they can at least play elite defense in their primes, where Melo, like, yeah, he was a cone on defense for most of his career.
Which is weird because he had all the physical tools to at least be a really solid interior defender. I mean, everyone always raves about how Melo was one of the strongest players in NBA history, like especially in the post. Like he had the tools to do it. It just wasn't a priority for him.
Yeah, to be fair to him, you know, in his prime, he didn't have the best co-stars. He had an aging Allen Iverson who also wasn't known for passing. He had Chauncey Billups past his prime, and then he had like a year and a half of Amari before he was decimated by injuries. Every other star player that won a title around this era, outside of like maybe Dirk, had a better supporting cast or had like elite co-stars around them. And even like Dirk's 2011 team, like maybe he didn't have a better co-star than Melo had, but overall, I think it was a better, like more well-balanced team.
Yeah, I'd say Chauncey's a better co-star, but the Mavericks, I think, had the better overall team, yeah. And finally, by the time he went ring chasing, you know, his game didn't age super well, and it took him a while to accept, you know, a lesser role. And again, I think he was scapegoated coming out of Houston, but the fact that he basically had to take a year off to get back in the NBA, like that's a year of his career that was wasted. And look, once he accepted that role as like a spot-up shooter, he was really solid at it. Like for the Blazers, he was like 15 points coming off the bench, spot-up three-point shooter, still couldn't play defense, but I mean, who can at fucking age like 34, 35? Most guys can't. Like you don't expect that from a guy his age, right? Could hit a big shot now or then. Like I said, hit that game winner in Toronto. I remember he hit a big 3 in game 1 against the Lakers that really like put the game out of reach. Like he was really capable of doing it. It just took him a while to accept it.
Yeah, and if it didn't take him so long, maybe he could have gone to a team like the Warriors or, you know, a Celtics team that could actually compete and not, you know, as much as we loved his time here, like waste 2 years in Portland on a team that wasn't going to compete.
Hey man, you didn't want to see us if we got past the Nuggets in 21.
True.
We were on our way.
We were going to smoke everyone, but Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. whooped our ass. So with that all being said, Melo, he's an absolute legend. He won a title in college. He's got 3 gold medals. He's one of the most accomplished NBA players on an individual level of all time.
Hell, I've got his Blazer jersey.
That's hilarious.
I fucking love the guy.
Yeah, exactly. But the one thing he wasn't able to win was an NBA championship. So what do you guys think? Is there a scenario where Melo was maybe drafted to a better place and won titles, or had a better supporting cast and could have won some titles? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like, and hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well. And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.